The small shop on the corner of a busy New York street had once been a lively place. Families stopped by for groceries, workers grabbed coffee, and the owner, an elderly man named Mr. Thompson, greeted every customer with a warm smile. But times had changed. The shelves were emptier than before, and so was the store. Rising costs, online shopping, and declining foot traffic had pushed Mr. Thompson's business to the brink. Bills piled up, and the fear of closing his doors forever loomed over him. One quiet afternoon, as Mr. Thompson counted the few dollars he had earned that day, the doorbell chimed. He looked up, expecting just another passerby, but instead, he saw someone he never imagined would step into his store: Barron Trump. The young man, standing tall and composed, glanced around the store, taking in the fading paint on the walls and the near-empty shelves. He walked up to the counter, meeting Mr. Thompson's weary eyes with curiosity and concern. "How long have you had this store?" Barron asked, his voice calm and respectful. Mr. Thompson sighed. "Almost 40 years, young man, but it won't last much longer at this rate." Barron listened attentively, asking about the struggles small businesses faced. Unlike others who had simply walked past without noticing, he genuinely cared. And then, he did something no one expected. Instead of just offering financial help, Barron pulled out his phone and started recording. Standing beside Mr. Thompson, he spoke directly to the camera. "This store has been part of this community for decades. Mr. Thompson has worked hard to keep it going, but he needs our help. Small businesses like his are disappearing, and it's up to us to support them." Within minutes, the video was uploaded to his social media accounts. With millions of followers, it didn't take long for the post to spread. The message resonated with people across the country. By the next morning, something incredible happened. Customers began pouring in, locals who hadn't visited in years, travelers who had seen the video, and even well-known personalities who wanted to be part of the movement. Orders flooded in, shelves emptied at a pace Mr. Thompson had never seen before. The story didn't just stay in the neighborhood. Major news outlets picked it up, and hashtags like #Save Local Shops and #Barron Trump Effect started trending. People across the country began sharing stories of their own neighborhood stores, pledging to support them before they disappeared. As for Mr. Thompson, he stood behind the counter, overwhelmed with gratitude. His store had been saved, not by charity, but by kindness and action. When reporters asked Barron why he had stepped in, his response was simple: "Sometimes all it takes is for someone to notice and take action. I just did what anyone should do." And with that, Barron left the store as quietly as he had entered, leaving behind a movement that had just begun. Mr. Thompson had spent nearly 4 decades running his small corner store in New York. It wasn't just a business, it was his life. He knew every customer by name, watched generations grow up, and took pride in being a part of the community. But times had changed. With rising costs, big supermarkets, and online shopping, small businesses like his were struggling. The foot traffic had slowed. Regular customers had moved away or simply stopped coming. Each morning he unlocked the doors with hope, but by evening he counted fewer and fewer sales. The shelves weren't stocked like they used to be, and the unpaid bills kept stacking up. One cold afternoon, as Mr. Thompson sat behind the counter, staring at a nearly empty register, the store's doorbell chimed. He looked up, expecting another passerby. But instead, a tall young man walked in, a face he recognized instantly: Barron Trump. The former president's son wasn't someone you'd expect to see in a struggling mom-and-pop shop. His presence alone was enough to make a few customers glance in surprise. What was he doing here? Barron took his time looking around. He noticed the worn-out shelves, the faded paint, the old cash register that had probably been there since the store first opened. His gaze shifted to Mr. Thompson, who managed a tired smile. "Welcome, young man. What can I get you?" the store owner asked. Barron approached the counter and hesitated for a moment before speaking. "How long have you had this store?" Mr. Thompson let out a small sigh. "Nearly 40 years. But I don't know how much longer I can keep it open." There was a brief silence, the kind that carried the weight of unspoken struggles. Barron listened carefully, nodding as Mr. Thompson shared his worries about small businesses closing, about people preferring convenience over community, about how he had invested everything into this store only to watch it slowly fade away. And then, Barron did something unexpected. Instead of just offering sympathy, he pulled out his phone, turned on the camera, and began recording. This store has been here for decades. Mr. Thompson has served this community for years, but like many small businesses, he's struggling. If we don't support stores like his, they'll be gone forever. He posted the video on his social media, not expecting what would happen next. Within hours, it went viral. By the next morning, a line had formed outside Mr. Thompson's shop. Customers flooded in, locals, tourists, and even influencers who had seen the video. The shelves that were once full of dust were now empty because everything had sold out. News outlets picked up the story, and soon, the movement #SaveLocalShops was trending. Across the country, people were stepping up to support their local businesses, inspired by one simple act. When reporters asked Barron why he did it, his answer was simple. Sometimes all it takes is for someone to notice and take action. I just did what anyone should do. And with that, he walked away, leaving behind a store saved and a movement that had just begun. Barron walked slowly toward the counter, his sharp eyes scanning the store. The shelves were half empty, stocked only with a few dusty products. The once vibrant shop looked like it had seen better days. He could almost feel the weight of years pressing down on the place, a silent testament to a man who had given his life to this small business. Mr. Thompson, the elderly store owner, stood behind the counter, adjusting his glasses as he looked up at his unexpected guest. He recognized Barron immediately, though he wasn't quite sure why the young man was here. With a tired smile, he straightened up and asked, "What can I do for you today, son?" Barron didn't respond right away. He leaned on the counter, glancing at the faded newspaper clippings pinned to the wall. Old articles about the store's opening. A picture of Mr. Thompson as a young man beaming with pride. A small plaque read, "Serving this community since 1985. "How long have you had this place?" Barron finally asked. Mr. Thompson chuckled softly, though there was sadness behind it. "Nearly 40 years. Started when I was younger than you. Back then, everyone shopped local. Now, well, you can see how it is." Barron nodded, understanding more than words could explain. He could see the pain in the old man's eyes, the struggle of someone who had given everything, only to watch it slowly slip away. There was a long pause, the kind that made Mr. Thompson wonder if the conversation was over. But then Barron pulled out his phone, unlocking it with a quick swipe. "Would you mind if I recorded something?" he asked. The old man frowned slightly. "Recorded? What for?" "Just trust me," Barron said with a small smile. With a quick tap, he started filming. "Hey everyone, I want to introduce you to Mr. Thompson," Barron said, turning the camera toward the shopkeeper. "He's been running this store for 40 years. He's seen families grow, kids turn into adults, and this neighborhood change. But now, like a lot of small businesses, he's struggling to keep his doors open." Mr. Thompson blinked in surprise as Barron continued. "I know we all love convenience, ordering online, big supermarkets. But at what cost? Places like this are disappearing. And once they're gone, they don't come back." Barron paused for a moment, letting his words settle before delivering the final push. "So here's the deal. If you're in New York, come by Thompson's Market. Buy something, anything. Let's show that small businesses still matter." With that, he stopped the recording and hit post. Mr. Thompson shook his head, a small, bewildered smile appearing. "You really think that'll do anything?" Barron tucked his phone back in his pocket and grinned. "Give it a few hours." What neither of them knew was that the video was about to change everything. Barron tapped the record button on his phone, steadying it in his hand. The small convenience store around him was quiet, too quiet. The shelves, once filled with products, now looked half empty, a sign of hard times. The old wooden counter held a cash register that had seen better days, and behind it Mr. Thompson stood, still uncertain about what was happening. Barron took a deep breath and began speaking into the camera. "Hey everyone, I want you to meet Mr. Thompson," he said, panning the camera toward the elderly store owner. The man adjusted his glasses, giving a small, hesitant nod. For nearly 40 years he's been running this store, serving the community, watching generations grow. This place isn't just a shop, it's history. But now, like so many small businesses, it's on the verge of closing. And once places like this disappear, they never come back. Mr. Thompson looked down for a moment, as if the words hit deeper than he expected. Barron continued, his tone more urgent. "I know it's easy to shop online or head to a big supermarket, but what about the people who've dedicated their lives to businesses like this? What about the connections we lose when stores like Thompson's Market shut down?" He turned the camera back on himself. "So, here's the challenge. If you're in New York, stop by, buy something, show that small businesses still matter. And if you're not, share this video. Let's remind the world that community comes first." With that, Barron ended the recording. He tapped post, adding a simple caption. "Let's save a small business today. Support local, Zart Thompson's Market." Mr. Thompson shook his head with a half smile. "You really think a video's gonna change anything?" Barron slipped his phone back into his pocket, grinning. "Give it a few hours." At first, nothing happened. The minutes ticked by like any other day. A few likes, a couple of comments. But then, something shifted. A celebrity retweeted the video. Then another. Influencers with millions of followers started resharing it, adding their own stories about their favorite local businesses. People felt the message and they responded. Within an hour, the video had 50,000 views. By the end of the day, over 1 million. News outlets picked it up. Headlines read, "Barron Trump's call to save small businesses goes viral." A simple video, a big impact, Thompson's Market sees unexpected surge. And the most unbelievable part? The next morning, customers lined up outside Thompson's Market. Some drove for hours just to buy a single item. The shelves that were once half empty, they were clearing out, not because of loss, but because of support. Mr. Thompson stood at the counter, watching in awe. His store, his life's work, it had been saved. And it all started with one video. The morning after Barron's video went viral, Mr. Thompson unlocked the door to his store like any other day. He wasn't expecting much. In fact, he had already been considering what to do once the store finally shut down. But then, he heard it. The chime of the doorbell. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. Mr. Thompson looked up and his breath caught in his throat. Customers, dozens of them, were walking in, filling the narrow aisles. Some carried baskets, others pulled out lists, ready to buy whatever they could. The old store, which had been on the brink of closing, was suddenly alive again. A young woman approached the counter with a small purchase, a pack of gum. She smiled as she placed it down. "I drove 2 hours just to support you," she said. Before Mr. Thompson could respond, the line behind her grew longer. People weren't just here to shop. They were here to save his store. By noon, the shelves were nearly empty. The old cash register rang nonstop, the sound echoing like a heartbeat. Local reporters showed up, cameras rolling, capturing the unbelievable turnaround. News anchors broadcasted live segments outside the store. "This is more than just a viral video," one journalist said. "This is a movement." People shared their own stories about struggling businesses in their towns. Other shop owners posted online, hoping for similar support. The hashtag #SupportLocal started trending worldwide. Barron, watching everything unfold from his phone, knew this was bigger than he had imagined. Later that evening, as the last customer left, Mr. Thompson locked the door. The store was sold out. Every item, every shelf. He turned to Barron, his eyes welling up with tears. "Son, I don't know how to thank you." Barron smiled. "You already did, by keeping this place alive." Mr. Thompson sighed, shaking his head. "I was ready to give up, but now I have hope again." Barron patted him on the shoulder. "Then that's all that matters." The next day, news outlets across the country reported on the impact of one video. A small act, a big change. How Barron Trump's video is saving small businesses. Thompson's Market was about to close. Now, it's flourishing. Even politicians and celebrities chimed in, pledging support for small businesses nationwide. What started as a simple video became a movement. Mr. Thompson's store was safe. But more than that, millions of people were reminded that community still matters. And it all began with one act of kindness. The morning after the video went viral, the world had already taken notice. News anchors debated the unexpected impact of a single moment, while social media buzzed with discussions about how one act of kindness sparked a movement. Headlines flooded every major platform. Barron Trump steps up, a small act with a big impact. How one video revived a small business overnight. The power of social media. Can more young people make a difference? Mr. Thompson's store was no longer just a struggling business on the verge of closing. It was now a symbol of resilience, unity, and hope. Inspired by Barron's actions, communities everywhere began sharing similar stories. A grocery store in Ohio that had seen declining sales found new life as customers rushed in after a local influencer highlighted its struggles. A family-owned diner in Texas, nearly bankrupt, saw a surge of visitors after a heartfelt post encouraged people to support small businesses. Even a tiny bookstore in California, one that had been operating for over 50 years, experienced a sudden wave of customers, all wanting to help. The hashtag #SupportLocal wasn't just trending anymore, it had become a movement. People who had never met Mr. Thompson, who had never even been to his town, donated online to help him rebuild his store. Orders poured in from different states. Some customers even sent letters sharing how much they admired his resilience. But through all of this, Barron remained humble. When reporters reached out to him for interviews, he kept his response simple. "I just did what anyone should do," he said. "We all have a responsibility to look out for each other." He didn't want the focus to be on him. He wanted it to be on the store, the people, and the message behind it. When asked whether he planned to continue advocating for small businesses, he nodded. "This isn't just about one store, it's about every small business that's struggling. We can all help in some way." His words resonated deeply. Social media platforms saw thousands of young people stepping forward, asking how they could contribute to their local communities. Parents encouraged their children to support family-run businesses. Schools started discussions on the power of small acts of kindness. Weeks later, Mr. Thompson's store was not only surviving, it was thriving. New products lined the shelves. Customers returned, not just to shop, but to celebrate what had been saved. And somewhere in the heart of it all, Barron Trump knew this was never about him. It was about something much bigger. A reminder that kindness, no matter how small, could change everything. The store that once stood on the edge of closure now buzzed with life. Shelves, once half empty, overflowed with products. The dull hum of an old cash register had been replaced by the cheerful chime of customer after customer, stepping in to support a business that had almost disappeared. Mr. Thompson, the store's longtime owner, stood behind the counter, his eyes scanning the crowd that filled his shop. Just weeks ago, he had accepted the heartbreaking reality that his business, his life's work, would soon be gone. Now he saw a different reality, one he never expected. What had changed? A single moment, a simple act of kindness. Mr. Thompson had run his shop for over 3 decades. It was more than just a store. It was a place where people shared their stories, where neighbors gathered, where community meant something. And then the world changed. Big corporations took over, online shopping became the norm, and the small-town store that had once been the heart of the community started fading away. That is, until Barron Trump walked in. Barron didn't know Mr. Thompson personally. He didn't come in with a camera crew or a plan to make headlines. He simply saw a man struggling and chose to help. What followed was something no one could have predicted. The moment went viral. News channels picked up the story. Social media platforms were flooded with discussions. People from all over the country reached out to help. But for Mr. Thompson, it was never about the money. It wasn't about money, it was about hope. What happened in that small town didn't stay there. It became a movement. People everywhere started paying attention to their own communities. In New York, a struggling coffee shop owner found his business saved after a local news station highlighted his story. In Texas, a small bookstore that had been around for generations saw a sudden surge in visitors. Across the country, people chose to shop local, support small businesses, and be part of the change. The hashtag #SupportLocal became more than a trend. It became a call to action. Despite the media attention, Barron remained humble. "I didn't do anything special," he said in an interview. "I just did what anyone should do." That was the message that resonated with millions. One person, one small action, one big impact. The camera fades out on Mr. Thompson's store. Customers laugh, shelves are full, and the place that was once on the verge of closing now thrives. The world had watched as kindness and action created real change, and it all started with one simple moment, one person who cared.